Hi, I'm Dennis Weiss for Eagle Communications. Welcome to our town, and we are at the place in our town, which is the Eisenhower Presidential Library and Museum with the director, Carl Weisenbach, and I want to thank you this morning.
Well, I want to thank you for having me on the program. I appreciate it very much.
You're welcome, but I have a more specific thank you.
Oh.
Yes. So the last time I was in your building, I was able to walk on stage downstairs in the auditorium and to introduce Driving Miss Daisy to 133 seats that were full. And to do that particular play at the Eisenhower Presidential Library, knowing that you had made it possible for us to be here as a community and to share that facility, is a big thing, Carl, and I wanted to say on camera, thank you so much for putting the effort, the belief in our community out in front of Washington to say this should happen. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, and kudos also to the Archivist of the United States for signing the paperwork that allowed that to take place.
Very, very
so
good.
I appreciate him doing that, for us.
It's too bad he wasn't here to see it.
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
well received. They had a great play, and I just thought it was so significant. And kudos to your museum staff who put together the little civil rights display out front as you walked in. It's still there today as I walked in. I saw many people stop and look and read. I helped drive the golf cart several of those nights, and it was interesting to me to watch people look at that exhibit and start to put the two and two together. You know, that's how history becomes real to people.
Exactly. So kudos to the staff for thinking about doing that.
Yeah.
I heard a lot of good comments when I came back to work.
So and you were in Germany.
I was in Germany, yeah.
And what were you doing?
Well, I was there for a museum conference for a German museum, at a German museum. But while I was there, I also had the opportunity to participate in the activities surrounding the 25th anniversary of the fall of the wall. And it was really a great honor to be there. There must have been about 1 million people, at the events. And I think it lasted until 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning. But it was great, and you only get to do something like that once in a lifetime, I think.
Isn't that amazing? You know, every time I come here, it reminds me that history is still very real.
Very much so.
And that Dwight David Eisenhower was such a key player in so many things that are still very real to us today.
Yeah. You know, one of the things I learned is that many Germans didn't even know that Eisenhower was the first military governor, if you will, of Germany from April to November 1945, and they were shocked. And I said, well, maybe the history books need to add a chapter on Eisenhower. I think that was my response, because he was so involved in many things pertaining to the rebuilding of Europe, NATO, and so forth.
I remember reading a couple of letters that Eisenhower sent back, and the reason I got a chance to read them, we were looking at some data. Tim had sent me some data about the prison camps.
Oh, yeah.
And but I was also particularly struck by how quickly Eisenhower was able to pivot to this rebuilt. We're an army. This place, Europe, needs rebuilt. And it's going to be a task that we're not ideally suited for, but nobody else but us can do it.
Right.
And that was a very brief little note to the president. And I thought, not everybody would have seen that way.
Right.
Eisenhower was unique in the ability to transfer his military expertise into governance.
Right.
That had never been done before.
Yeah. Well, he had that reputation for being a great planner. And it paid off, on the beaches of Normandy, but also at the end of the war, the Cold War side time period as well. So, what a fabulous, individual he was. So it's an honor to work here. Because of all of the great things that he accomplished in his presidency in his lifetime.
Great segue. Sam gave us a pile of stuff.
As
she
usual.
always gives us a pile of stuff, but there's a pile of things going on. But numbers don't work well on TV, radio, or any place else other than on a spreadsheet, but the word record does. You set a record again this year for the number of researchers who are working on Eisenhower.
The library has been open for over 50 years, the library building and research opportunities. And usually you set a record for researchers at the beginning of a presidential library, right? But here at Eisenhower, we've done it the other way here. We've actually had a record again this year for the number of researchers, which I think is a testimony to the importance of President Eisenhower. And this came about because the library is very proactive in not just promoting, exhibits and so forth, but also our holdings. Right. And why it matters to have the documents in the hand of researchers and so forth. So it was a great year for researchers, over 800 right, on site.
That's a lot.
And many of them who lived in the community, during their research, which is important, for merchants downtown and elsewhere in the area, right? So I think that's wonderful, and also. It wasn't an all-time record, but we did set a highest attendance record since the Eisenhower centennial. So that's good news as well, and hopefully
186,000. Wow, 186,000 people.
Total for all visitors. But
I don't think that many people came to the Eagle Building.
But the good news is, if we don't have any government shutdowns, right,
3 weeks. That was 3 weeks, right?
Yeah, it was long. My hope is that we will hopefully go over 200,000 this year.
That's an amazing number.
It is.
Looking at Sam's list, I'm going to lump some things together. I see Dickinson County Arts Council 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times right there on the top half.
Right.
The integration of the Eisenhower Presidential Library into our community is very thorough. Unless you work here or you're one of these people, you may not see that. We try to talk about it on camera when I come here. But this is Eisenhower and this is Abilene area, and they truly are integrated to do benefit for other people, for the Arts Council, to the Royer Film Festival, who uses their resources to outreach to people here through the film festival. Kansas Geography Bee, and this slick little flyer that you can get a shot of maybe, but the premiere of a brand new Smithsonian traveling exhibit called The American Backyard, the patios, pools, and the invention of the American backyard. Sam gave this to me and gave me something to read here, and here's what hit my mind. This is the American dream.
It is the American dream.
So Sam said, Eisenhower, this all kind of started, the suburban and the prosperity mechanism really grew during the Eisenhower years. And that's the American dream. And true enough, Eisenhower presided over 8 years of peace and prosperity and the birth of what we know as the modern American dream.
Right, exactly. And we look forward to having this exhibit here. I think it's coming in March, if I'm not mistaken.
March 21.
And
through May.
And I think we're the first place to host the exhibit. And if there's anybody out there that wants to sponsor the exhibit, we would love to have a chat with you.
Gosh, I can think of some furniture stores, some people who work with these sorts of products who should want their name on that. So we'll help you reach out to some of those people and see. But that would be great. Another great segue. It's awfully easy, Carl, to think that this being a federal facility, this stuff just happens, but all of these programs and many of these exhibits don't come unless people within the reach of this camera write you a check and say, I would like to have my name attached, I would like to sponsor something from the Arts Council or the Royer Film Festival. Wouldn't happen without the Royer on the front of it.
Oh, exactly, yeah.
All of these things, these programs that are such a benefit to our community come generally from the generosity of people in the community.
Agreed. I think the hardest problem that I have here, the most difficult problem I have, is trying to explain the partnership between the federal government and the national and international community and the local community. Mm-hmm. People don't understand, and I can understand why, but they don't understand that the federal government provides, funding for infrastructure issues. They make sure, we get the trash picked up, for example, or the grass gets cut, right? They will pay for my salary, right? But when it comes to providing funding support for exhibits or things like the symphony, right, or the Easter egg roll, right, that comes from donors. We have to rely on donors for that, right? And I can say that we've got great donors in the community. We're lucky that we can continue to have the symphony on the plains. We're looking forward to having that in June. That's a huge event.
Very popular event.
Very popular, but it does cost. There's a cost associated with it. So we're trying to, address it. And people, I know some of y'all have already heard me talk about it, but it's so important to our success, right? Is to ensure that these programs, are funded, but it's going to require funding support from the community at large. But it's great. For us, it's a great time at the moment because we're putting together all these varied programs you see on the table. That's what the staff is doing right now, making all the arrangements. We're bringing in, a top-notch speaker to do, our VE program. We look forward to that. And
Can I pick on one?
Oh yeah, sure.
Right here. January 24th, Battle of the Bulge, 70th anniversary, and the Kansas chapter of the veterans is really whose event it is, and you're hosting them, and I'm sure there's going to be some things there. But, the Battle of the Bulge, everybody that will see this has at least heard of the Battle of the Bulge.
Right.
Many people who will see this know something about that. That is such an iconic event in our history. And so important to the eventual outcome of World War II. And of course, Eisenhower was dead center in the middle of all of that. So how fitting it is that the Kansas chapter of those veterans from the Battle of the Bulge can use this facility to have their conference. Oh yeah,
we're honored that we can host the conference. I think it's going to be a great. And it'll give us opportunities to chat with some of those that actually were at the Battle of the Bulge and get their take and hopefully learn something new that we can share.
I think it was a year ago that we had on Channel 2 General Sykes. The Thompson brothers did that interview. He was Roger's neighbor over in Fort Riley for a long time in Junction City, but General Sykes passed away last year, and he was a veteran of the Battle of the Bulge and the entire campaign.
But he was something else though too. He was a huge supporter of the library. In one of the taped interviews with him, he talks about the importance of the institution, and he got it, right? And he knew that if funding is not available, that could have negative input for not just us, but for the community at large. So,
he was a cool guy.
He was really a cool guy. I mean, he was just a wonderful human being, and I'm just, glad that I had the opportunity to meet him. I felt really honored to be in his presence, and I think the other staff members at the library would say the same thing.
He said this on camera, but I don't remember the number, but the number of days that he was in combat.
Right.
It was a long, long number, and that was on foot. I mean, they occasionally rode in a truck, but that was it. That was on foot combat, including that Battle of the Bulge. I remember his smile when he talked about things. He told one of his favorite stories about who he was as an old man was he volunteered at the schools in Junction City, and he went to the school which had been named after him. Went to the school one day to talk to some kids, and heard one of the little people said, "Oh, look, he has the same name as our school." The other way around, presuming that The school had always been there because that was their frame of reference. But I guess my point is this. We're so very fortunate to have Eisenhower as a legacy holder in Abilene. He claimed Abilene as his greatest legacy. That's the proudest thing that he could say is from Abilene. We have many people who have followed in Eisenhower or followed Eisenhower's footsteps, including General Sykes. But that is all a benefit to our community. What a resource as a community that you can go anywhere in the world, as you often do, and talk about Abilene, Kansas, and Dwight David Eisenhower.
Yeah, and you know what I tell a national and or international audience, there are only 13 presidential libraries in the world. And they say, really? I said, yes, really. It's a unique type of presidential library. And then we always have a long talk about why presidential libraries will be important in the future, 300, 400 years from now, right? I mean, people will still be going to Abilene to study Eisenhower and learn about the presidency and learn things about the presidency that can be applied to their situation. So the historical value, the long term, is absolutely incredible. And I think we are, we know that. And that's why when we have an interview with General Sykes on tape, that's something for the future to take hold of and listen to what the man has to say about his experience. So whether they want to repeat it or not repeat it, they'll have something in front of them.
You talked about the record and researchers, and we may have said this on camera before, but it's worth saying again. I don't think that's an accident. I think people research in an area they think where answers lie. They look for answers, and that's what researchers do. They don't write books that they don't expect people to read, and they expect them to want to read it because there's things of value there. So you look at over 860 researchers here. That says there is a significant interest in what Eisenhower knew and what he did, and it's here. It's in your archives. It's a treasure trove of knowledge for the world.
It is. And one of the things that I also like is that the foundation is very, very proactive in reaching out to our youth. In the future, and in this coming year, you're going to see a lot of school buses, pulling out.
That's terrific.
Now they're going to learn about the Eisenhower era, and they're going to also get pizza, local pizza too. So it's good. It's good for us. It's good for the kids, but it's also good for our local eateries too. When we have such a large number of kids coming.
I am confident that Dwight David Eisenhower would flash one of his brilliant smiles. He had one of those smiles that lit the place up. You can watch the old black and whites and see that that's true. I am confident that he would be very, very happy to see those young people at his place, learning and growing.
And I think he would like this too, because the outdoor patio and so forth, is because he likes to cook steak outdoors on the grill and so forth.
Well, he's an Abilene guy. How can you not?
Yeah, exactly, right. So I find it interesting. This is something that he liked. He liked to grill his steaks, and so maybe at the White House a little bit different than here in Abilene, but still, I'm sure he had beef from Kansas, but while he was president.
You may know. Well, I'm sure you do. I work with the Chamber of Commerce as a volunteer, and you've had to sit with me often enough on camera to know that I get a little pulpit pounding, preachy about economic development, and
which is good that you do that.
And the fight to stay alive.
Exactly.
I'm very heartened by the fact that if it ever gets seriously bad enough for people to want to look at how you reconstruct an economy, I have a real good hint on where they should look.
Oh,
the expert of the world in how to restart an economy. Records are just right over there, and it's the reconstruction of Europe is really the restarting of an economy and what it takes. And there's a lot of information here to help people understand the challenges of restarting, changing from a war machine to a peace machine is the essential, the thing in the middle at the fulcrum there is how to restart your economy. And everybody in Kansas is looking for a way to do that. So maybe there's some folks in the economic world out here. Down at Wichita State, there's a bright young guy. He likes to watch our programs, and we have communication with him. Maybe he needs to come up and do a little digging here in the archives.
Well, yeah, and I would also say that one of the things that has really helped us is that we believe strongly in promoting, you know, where we are and who we are and so forth, and that's why we support billboards. And we've learned, you know, from the public, you know, how did you learn about the Eisenhower Library of Abilene? As they're driving down I-70 on the Eisenhower Memorial Highway, by the way, they see the billboards. A lot of people say they see the billboards and they say, well, you know, we got an hour or two to kill, so we'll go to the Presidential Library. So we're trying to do our responsibility by promoting the community as much as possible, because we all win. It's a win-win situation when we can pull more and more people, you know, into Abilene.
Well, you do a great job of it, Carl, and you're...
Well, the staff does a great job. You know, people like Samantha Kenner, for example, Linda Smith.
Marketing is a big piece of
marketing
the world.
is huge, huge. So I love the billboards, and hopefully we can get funding for additional billboards in places like Kansas City and Wichita and so forth. Yeah, so.
Well, it's good to be back. We're so happy to have a chance to come again.
Well,
we thank you for your time today, and we never get through the list, but we hit the high spots.
But they can always use our social media or give us a call.
Okay, all right.
I mean, social media, you know, we always let the public know, you know, what's going to be taking place on a particular day and so forth. It's a great source. So I don't say that because Samantha's here, right across from me, right? But well, Samantha and Linda might have something to say to me afterwards.
That's true, that's true. Yeah. Well, okay, so we'll sign off with this.
Thank you.
This is still Abilene, Kansas, and they can just walk in and ask.
Exactly, yeah.
Right? Welcome, and from the Eisenhower Presidential Library, from Carl Weisenbach, and for Eagle Communications, I'm Dennis Weiss. Thank you for watching today.